Typical Southland day. First time I came to northern Southland, it was spring day like this. I thought, wow, what a beautiful place. And then so I came back and it was snowing. And everyone was hiding in the Dome Cafe in Mossburn. but here we are. So, well, just a quick intro to myself. I am, for my part, as Dan said, on Pasture Summit Committee of dairy farming at Driffield for the last 24 years. We're a farm we converted when we were share milking. 4 daughters raised there, and they've all enjoyed farming. So, and that's home. So, dairy farming is a great life for a family. I think there's no better place to be, but it's profitability that gives you choices. And the New Zealand data shows pretty clearly that it's controlling costs and lifting pasture harvested are the key drivers to that. And on top of that, for yourselves, having a plan and a goal and using the money smart is when you get to my age and you've got a lot of choices. So we've heard how Chris keeps his finger on the financials. So we're going to move on to the pasture area. Just something I wanted to just say, just in the back of the financials, I want to say, could have said it there, but just remember that the herd here does phenomenal production. And a part of that means that the cost per kilo milk solids look good, but the actual spend per cow is higher than you would normally see. So, and Chris talked about the cogs in this business. It's run intensively, and every cog matters and every turn matters. So, in the hands of someone who wasn't so OCD, as it were, in your words, Chris, so you have to be on your A game to run an intensive system like this. I think James, you said the same. You've seen that in the UK. When you people they throw money at it, and if they don't get every element right, it doesn't stick. So just to be aware that this farm's run at an extremely high level, and that allows to have a very competitive unit cost of production, and that's so high output and low cost per unit, high profit, but high cost, middling production, poor profit. So we're at the upper end of that one. So, all right, Chris, do you want to come up here and we'll just I think what we'll do is you've seen the cows there. Veronica's going to move on to those. We've got pasture here. Perhaps just we go through a little bit around the seasonal planner here, just what happens at different times of the year, so we can understand how the farm system works. At any stage, I'll take questions at any stage. No question's a bad question. We've got, very fortunate to have Jane Kay here today. Jane with us. Jane's probably one of our foremost dairy scientists in New Zealand, and very lucky to have her. And she can pretty much answer any question you have. So you don't often see scientists out in the field, but here's one. And Jane's very passionate about what she does, so very privileged to have her. Any question, pretty much science question, you can throw it, and she will field it to her or to Ron. So, Chris, do you want to just talk us through the supply and demand? Give you a little bit about what happens during the season. You know what's happening when, and
with the winter barns.
Your shout, who's that?
We're lucky enough to, with the winter barns and the runoff, that we've actually got zero stock on the platform throughout the winter. That gives us the ability for dry off anywhere between 1780 to 1800. That's when we'll pull up stumps. So you see this down here, we're not actually worried that we've got no grass. It's the biggest issue we're worrying about when everything starts to go get rolling there. So what we'll do, we'll manipulate a spring rotation planner. We'll start it out at starting on the 1st of August, and we'll just pretend that it's going to finish on the 25th of September. But what we'll do, we'll actually take off the last 7 days, and around the 18th and 19th, that's when we'll finish. So that's somewhere just around there. You see that sort of big spike, that's when the farm starts to wake up. So if we're waiting to actually see the grass grow and see the measure results and feel good about ourselves before we've started moving, we've missed the boat. Once the farm wakes up, we'll be on the back foot for 1 or 2 seasons. So we'll start our second round before the farm actually hits its straps, which is the 19th, and then we'll be on a 23-day round the whole way through. Just through this period here, we're in the fight. It's hard. We've got a lower stocking rate, but it grows a lot of grass. We're going to be really aggressive with mowing, pre-mowing, post-mowing. Most of it's post-mowing, but just having that paddock clean and knowing that residuals at 1500, 1550, and setting it up for that second round of mating. You'll find a lot of any pressure on our mating results are based off that week 4 to week 6, and that's just when that grass starts to get away from everybody, or especially us up here. So hitting it with a big stick, which is generally a mower, will keep that in line. Once we get just to that...
Sorry, Chris, just to clarify there, when you say the mower, it's mowed generally, I think you said generally for silage, you'll skip over paddocks, or is it as opposed to topping behind them?
Yeah, so once we get to surplus, anything above 2850 on our measure will measure every 4 days, so religious through that period. It's a little bit slower just coming out of spring, but definitely when we do our measure, after 4 days, the next bottom half of the sheet, which has got the measurements, they'll start jumping each other. There's different vigour in the grasses, different age, and different positions of the farm. So once we get halfway down that front page, we don't trust the writing it's written on, or the paper it's written on. So that's why we do that over and over. Got a good relationship with our contractors, so generally we'll cut it first and then say we've got some silage if they can bale it. So that doesn't matter if it's 5 hectares, 20 hectares, we'll just get them to come in, and they can come in through this growing season 2 or 3 times in a week, but just keeping on top of those pre-grazing covers is the key. Secondly, post-grazing is probably the most important part of it, is for us understanding exactly what's left in the paddock and then knowing what we can offer next time. So coming out of winter, we can get a little bit of dirty grass. It could be 1650, 1700. We go and measure it next time, pre-grazing, and it's up at 2850, 2800. We think, yeah, that's great. We'll chuck the cows in there, but albeit we've got 150 to 200 kgs per hectare of grass the cows won't eat. So we're actually underfeeding them when they're trying to ramp up. So if we can, we'll get in there and fix it. Generally, it's not a lot, the whole paddock, but at that time, but paddock parts would have been underwater or just been muddied through the weather, brake lines, etc. We'll clean that paddock up so we know that the residual's 1500 to 1550 and what's available is fully available.
Just to say, I should have said at the start, but the actual focus that's at Driffield on pasture management is intense. It's one of the key pillars of the business, as Chris has already said it. So the measurement, the monitoring, the desire to have execution just right, the cows go into just the right pre-grazing, the right area, the cows, the post-grazing's left exactly right, generally by grazing more if later or it's stepped over, is intense. So, and that delivers a very high performance per cow. So I should have said that at the start, but it's a key pillar of this business. So
yeah. So on that 23-day round, the cows are getting about 148 squares a day. So we'll balance it out between 54% at night and 46% during the day. So, and if we've got say we've got 1 hectare out of 500 cows, and for example we're feeding 5 hectares. If we had 1 hectare left in the paddock, we'd send 100 cows in there for that grazing, and then 400 to the next. We don't crash graze. Every cow for every grazing will have the same amount of time, same square metres. So it's just consistent feeding every day of the year. Break sizes stay the same. It's just us to manage the quality, which is post and pre.
Any questions for clarification at this stage?
23 days until the end of the season, or when you do 23 days whole season till the...
Yeah, that goes for the whole season.
So the question was it 23 days or for the ones from Magic Day onwards? And
yeah, from the 19th of September right to the end we'll be on.
Why is that, Chris?
The question was why?
Well, at the back end of the year we've started to get rid of a few culls now already, so we actually don't need to push our round out and for quality to diminish, I guess. So as we start to destock our culls at a period of time, our square metres available increases per cow. So as the numbers drop off, we can feed feed the cows the same amount, and we don't carry any grass through the winter. Up here it sort of just goes a murky, yellowy, slimy colour, and it's really hard to get going. The grass will actually grow faster behind the cows than in front of the cows coming out of winter.
So it is a very wet farm, I guess, which is a factor in that. So hopping back to this here, so we've got, where are we? So
Got up to about there.
yep, you got up to there. Just what have we got? Deficit here is filled with PKDDG. Just noticed that it was the feeding level 3 years ago was like 500, and then it went north, and now it's at 950. Is that a strategy, or is that reaction to the two wonderful springs you've had in Southland?
Unfortunately, that was a reaction, and then this year we thought we'll continue it and harvest the wider fringes and just import that feed, and it'll be a bit easier on the cows. But we ended up having the same spring again, so it was just plan B again. Through October and November, we'll put a little bit of DDG in with our PK. Just with the grass growing so quickly, we really think we just got to add a little bit more to the cows, just energy-wise. Try to get them in calf, and yeah.
So we've got, and through this period, feeding is 1 to 6 kilos of supplement, and then it's once we're into grass, grass is flying, we're down to what, 500 grams.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're shoulder feeders. We've probably crept a little bit more over the last couple of years, but grass is our bread and butter, and you can just see on our growth curve that we're only in a surplus for a smaller amount of time. On the 30th of October, we actually knock out 60 hectares of grass to go into summer turnips. So while we're in this peak here, that we know that by the time we get to middle of January, February, especially March, we're going to be in a deficit. It just sort of slows down at that time. There's a fair bit of moisture stress, so we'll feed turnips throughout that period, and then after that we're back down into a deficit now where we're feeding the shoulders again.
So the turnips are purely to try and knock the top off the peak growth to transfer it to when the growth is below demand.
Yeah, and it also fits in with 8% regrassing per year as well.
Part of the renovation plan. Yep.
23 days with the turnip area out.
Yeah,
The question
we'll just
The question is 23 days with the turnip area out.
yeah, that is correct. We'll manipulate the actual grazing area down a fraction, so we're still on the same round.
Hey Chris, in the milking season, do you feed any silage to fill the gaps, or is it all in-shed feeding?
On adverse weather events or just late autumn, we've done it fractionally. We just try and follow a little bit of rumination, which shows on the collars. If that drops down, or if there's the massive snow event, we'll do that. Generally when it snows here, the cows will graze evenly through the paddock, but about to 2400, so just to supplement them, and every time it snows we're trying to peak, so just got to keep them full.
Standard growth for that time of the year? How much you grow at that time?
Which time?
The growth, grass growth, how much you grass you grow?
Whenabouts?
Yeah, now, that time of the year? April, May?
Just asking what the April-May growth is here, typically.
It can vary between 55 and probably 10. What were we last two measures? 43 and 55. Yeah. Generally from now we've got a bit of snow on the hills, cooler mornings. It's just going to drive that soil temperature down, and our average cover is 22-35 at the moment, and we're on pretty much a bit of a nosedive to 1800 from now to the end.
Just noting it's a fairly intense, it's an intensively run business at scale with quite significant infrastructure, so I presume some of the things you do are to keep it repeatable and simple, so you can't be sort of hopping around strategically too much. Would that be fair? Or do you?
Yeah, we probably do pull a lot of levers when required. In terms of paddock and processes there, that doesn't change throughout the year. It's just whether or not we've got to pull levers, if it's PK trails outside of the cow sheds, walking past, or turning feed up daily. They're decisions we make based off of our regular measurements. So we're not measuring paddocks at this time of the year to see what we're going to cut for silage. We're measuring to see what our pre-grazing residuals are and what we've got to be putting in just to supplement them without wasting feed as well.
Just before I go to your question here, Dan, the pre-grazing is, the cows are in the paddock next door. This is the longest grass on the farm. So, James, you scored that how many days ago and how much was it?
So on Monday it was 25 Monday.
So Monday,
2 days.
2 days ago it was 25, so it's 2,600.
Mid 26 is
Yeah, so not quite at the, and normal target pre-graze is
2750.
2750, yeah. So but based on the stocking rate and what's moved now, they're getting off at 18 kilos of grass. That's based off the measure. We're actually finding autumn grass, it's just got a little bit less dry matter in there, so yeah, just actually got to watch what the cows are doing and what they're pushing into. You also find on a frosty morning and that up here, any of the sort of frosty grass where they've walked through and laid it over, they won't eat it straight away. It's just about the last stuff standing before they have a crack at it.
So you've had 2 wet springs in a row, especially this last one. How did you pivot with having 15% of your platform ungrazable? How did you get through that?
Yeah, I guess you can't worry about the conditions of what's there. You can just worry about what you can do to what you can do yourself. So for us here, we'll still graze 360 hectares. We're just going to be on some second round paddocks. It's just making sure we're putting food on at the right times. You know, we're above 6 degrees, temperatures are rising. You know, paddocks would have been dirty if we can get on them. We just got to clean them up, get them a top, etc. But there's not much you can do apart from just following that. And yeah.
I've got one more here, if that's okay, Alistair. And this was actually a question from earlier on. What were the drivers behind the 208,000 kgs of milk solid production growth in the first season you were here? What's the turning point there, and what have you changed?
It's just been round speed, I think. Like, you know, there's a 30 to 40 day round here. You go into elephant grass. It's just out the gate. So just being on top of that, you're not behind the wave. You're aggressively confronting the grass, which is growing at 100 miles an hour. We also put 50 more cows on each platform and just started cutting silage on a couple of fringe paddocks. We just found the actual milking area was a fraction too big, and we were getting dominated by the grass and by the farm itself. So to just get up to the consented amount of cows, just lower the area down a fraction, and you know, we can keep on top of that wave for as long as we can before it sort of affects quality.
Is your pre-topping and post-topping, or you just what's the decisions around that?
So the question was the mower, pre-topping, pre-mowing and post-mowing. What's the decision tree on that one?
The rule is that if it's shit standing up, it's shit laying down. So if it's like that, we'll cut it for silage, and if it's good quality and, you know, 25 above and we think they're going to smash it all, we'd do a bit of pre-mowing. But generally we'd just find if we get a bit carried away and do a bit of pre-mowing, actually milk drops, they start eating a bit of rubbish, a bit of that residual in the bottom, all the clumps and that all sort of go through the whole works, and actually working harder to digest that all.
I might just ask Jane to come here. I think just in light of probably it may not be self-evident, but the cows here are achieving phenomenal production of pasture. It's a whole new next level. The feeding is very in line with the rest of Southland, but the per cow production is way higher, which is driven by, I think, around the pasture thing. So, Jane, just perhaps if you talk us through some of what's happening here, maybe why, or in your own words, how it's achieved.
Cool, thank you, Al, and yeah, great opportunity. I really appreciate, like Al said, a research scientist, but to me, the most valuable part of what we do is being out with farmers on farm and looking at the whole business. And my background is ruminant nutrition and animal science, but when we look at feed eating, which is a key driver to Chris and the team's performance on this farm, it's that combination between the animal and the feed. So these graphs are in your booklets, I think page sort of 32 onwards, is it Al? Can't remember. Anyway, I'm sure you can see up here, but what I really wanted to sort of touch on is the amount of feed harvested on this farm, and Chris has really emphasised the importance of pasture management targets and the whole team and achieving those in that timely manner. And I think this graph over here really highlights the importance of benchmarking. So if we were just looking at Chris's farm here, which is in the solid bars, the same as earlier, we'd say actually his pasture harvested hasn't changed that much over the years, a little bit more. But when we look at the benchmark, and I'm not from Southland, but it sounds like there's been a couple of pretty challenging seasons behind you guys, you can see in 22, 23 similar to the benchmark. 23, 24 he was 10%, this farm was 10% above on their pasture harvested, and then in 24, 25 last year they were 20% above. So, we've looked at that increase in milk production over the last few years, but I think what's really important is to say where has that come from. And you can see there, it's that consistent harvesting of that pasture. And that's a combination of growing it, but also eating it. And I think, Chris has done a way better job of explaining it than what I would do. So, jump in. And I've said to Al, if I start to talk for too long, just rein me in, because it's an incredibly important area. But really, combination of that pasture harvested is growing the pasture, and that's hitting those residuals. And the reason we have that residual of 1600 is because that is optimum for that plant to grow again. So that plant, when you graze it down, you've eaten all that green leaf, that 12 ME green leaf there. We want to leave energy stores in that plant to put that first leaf out again after it's been grazed. And that has to come from what's still left behind. Once that first leaf comes out, it can do photosynthesis, it collects this beautiful sunlight. Second leaf is a little bit bigger. Then we've got 2 leaves out there catching the sun. The third leaf again is the biggest still. What was it? The spinnaker, you called it, Al. So that is sort of the physiology behind pasture growth. That's why we hit that residual. In order to hit that residual, it's all about that pre-graze cover. And that target 2600 to 3200, that is because we're optimizing quality. And when I'm talking quality, I'm talking energy, I'm talking digestibility of that grass. If cows go into a paddock, high quality, not elephant grass, as Chris mentioned, when it's getting too long, they will eat all of that. That utilisation will be high, and they'll hit that residual, and then we're set up again for that next round. So, what we're seeing here is we're seeing animals going into really high quality, and there's been a lot of research done which has looked at different pre-graze covers. So, let's say 3,000, 2,850 in that target range, versus animals going into 3,500, 4,000. They will always eat more at that lower pre-graze cover, and they're eating more of a higher quality. So you look at feed out here will be 12.5 ME, really high quality, versus a little bit longer, more mature, it'll be down at 11 ME. It doesn't seem much, but for every 10 kilos of dry matter those cows are eating, they're basically getting 1 kilo free. So they're getting more energy with every bite that they eat. Please call out, please sing out if there's any questions or comments as we go.
I think one thing to try and maximise the grass curve as well is that when we do our turnips, traditionally it's about 5 paddocks on each farm, which add up to 30 hectares each, is that we're picking 5 different varieties of grass. We just don't pick one, which is a favourable growing time. So we're actually spreading the growing pattern across the whole season, where we've got an early spring grass, late spring, summer, then early, late autumn. We're not just getting a flat curve, growth curve, where it all goes to seed or heads at the same date.
Jane?
Am I on there? Yep. Can you, we've got a scientist on stage, can you touch on the 3-leaf stage? And the other question is do you chase that at all, Chris? I know pasture species is a hot topic for you, and you could talk all day about it, but is there anything you monitor or notice on that 23-day round?
Yeah, so I can quickly touch on that 3-leaf stage, and I probably started before. And I know Philippa Headley is in the audience, and she sort of taught me this, so she probably should be up here doing this talk instead of me. But so really, like I said, the first leaf that plant grows is based on the energy left behind, and that's why we don't want to overgraze, because if we absolutely deck a paddock down to 1,200, it will take longer for that plant to put that first leaf out. We also don't want to undergraze or leave that residual too high, because what happens then is we get stem and stalk that's left behind, reduces the quality, for that next round, but also we get aerial tillers. So a plant has a baby tiller that grows at that grazing level. If that grazing level is too high, that baby tiller puts down roots, and those roots can't end up in the ground. So we get, reduced plant growth, reduced plant density going forward. So that first leaf is really important, and that's what grows from that, that 1600. That's the reason for that. That's sort of that optimum point between the cow eating the pasture and then that plant regrowing. So first leaf comes out, that's the smallest of the leaves, and then I said before it gets photosynthesis from the sun. The second leaf is a little bit bigger. Same again, you've got more energy coming into that plant from photosynthesis. The third leaf is the biggest still. Those leaves will come out at a similar time point. So, through that spring period, 8 days. So first leaf comes out after 8 days, second leaf comes out 16 days, third leaf comes out at 24 days. That third leaf is about half the mass of that plant. So we want to make sure, we're targeting that point. There's a little bit, when pasture growth starts to take off, we might go in at the 2.5 to maintain that quality. So it's a balance between that. I don't know, did that answer please, if that was your question, just sing out. More than happy to, if I haven't answered the question, more than happy to talk about it.
Can you talk about the picture, what it looks like today? What are you feeding? How many square metres? How many kgs of grass? I think you might have touched on that. And what are you using to fill the gap? And then also just touch on how much nitrogen you use this season. And maybe, I know you did talk about following the cows all the time, but what does that add up to?
At the moment, these cows here, for 440 cows, are getting 7.2 hectares a day, and at 2,600, I think, equates out to about 18 kilos. I don't think there's 18 kilos in the paddock. It's probably down about 16 and a half. We're topping up in the shed, but with a lot of the rain we've had in the last week, we're just feeding about 1 kilo, or just under 1 kilo dry matter of baleage across the herds.
How much in shed?
It's set on 5 kilos, but they're not eating it. They're just, I said to the boys, when after the rain and the rumination just dropped, we let it rain for a couple of days, just to try and catch up. Production had dropped. In terms of fertiliser, we'll use...
Sorry, Chris, just to expand there, it's not adding up to me. So you've got, if the 2,600 is saying is 18, they're getting 5 in the shed, which I presume they're eating.
They weren't eating it, no.
Oh, I see. So
they turned it off, yeah. But it was just for that period of time when it was wet for 2 days.
Oh, so kilo solids is what they're getting, and the residual is still, what's your residual?
We want to be at 1,600, 15 to 1,600 there, but it probably won't happen there today. There's a little bit of distraction and a bit of frost bite, but yeah.
So what will happen now, if it's, I guess, does that mean the next break's going to be adjusted, or what happens?
You'll find they'll tidy them up pretty good tonight, being a night grazing, a little bit more extra time and not so much of a distraction, I'd imagine.
So the strategy is to not make the same mistake, 2 grazings running. You sort the next grazing out if this one's not right.
Yeah, the second to last round, 1.5 rounds for us, is we wouldn't be particularly worried, because we know that our pre-grazing covers will be lower and lower, and we'll be pushed right back down, and it'll be clean and reset for spring.
Did James, do you think was that 2,600 adjusted there? You think that's what it is, or it's maybe a fraction less than that, or is it actually the way they're feeding today, it is about right?
I think 2,600 is probably correct, but it was measured 2 days ago. So yeah, that's the difference, probably close to 100 kgs.
So James said it was 2,600 2 days ago measured, and it's probably wasn't quite there, but it's there today. So that makes sense. Sorry, did I cut your question off, Dan, or no?
Yeah, in terms of fertiliser, we'll pretty much use pretty close to 190 units. We do our own right behind the cows every day, probably except for today. We might get half of it done. But I think a key thing too with grass growth is that when we spread our own fertiliser, we spread it 15 metre centres rather than wider, which is traditionally through the trucks. And you'll find we actually don't get a lot of striping, and I think the coverage rate's a lot more evened out, and you'll see that.
Just another thing I really wanted to touch on, and it's sort of just coming back to this graph here, is the value of this pasture to the system. And I think we often think about how much we pay for trucks to come up the driveway with supplement on it, but we don't often sit back and say, well, what is the value? Like, it's often called a low-cost feed. I always think it's a high-value feed, the pasture there. So I just did a few sort of sums. I mean, what this graph shows us here is pasture and crop harvested along the bottom, and then operating profit. And actually, this is last year, so what this showed is that for every extra tonne of pasture or crop that was harvested last year was worth an additional $700 of operating profit per hectare. So if we look at what Chris and his team did, an extra 2 tonne of pasture harvested, that was worth an extra $1,500 per hectare of profit. Chris's team does 1,500 kilos of milk solids per hectare.
Yep, just
Give or take. So, and their business does over 1 million kilos of milk solids. So that extra 2 tonne of pasture that was harvested last year was worth over $1 million to this business. So we call this a low-cost feed. I think we really need to talk about it as being an incredibly high-value feed. And that 2 tonne that was growing meant that, for Chris and the team to run that same business last year without it, it would have been 2 tonnes per hectare more of feed bought in the gate. So it still would have been a profitable business. I'm not saying it wouldn't have been, it would have been, but that was an extra $1 million of profit that they made last year through the extra, 2 tonnes of pasture harvested on farm.
2 questions. One, how many hectares of turnip a year? And the second one is, when is your middle point for calving?
So the question was hectares of turnips a year and the midpoint for calving date.
We do 30 hectares on each block, so it's 60 in total.
The status quo situation, every year the same.
Yeah, it has been in the past. We're looking at maybe just decreasing a fraction. It felt like this year the tail of the turnips wagged a fraction too long, and we just sort of missed a little bit of pasture growth or pasture eaten. But it's sort of hard to nail that down whether it's right or wrong, because every year's been just a fraction different. In terms of midpoint in calving, we'll be end of August. We'll be about 76% calved. I think it's about the 14th or 15th of August. It's pretty quick.
I'm conscious now, I can feel Veronica's eyes on me, that amateur hour here and we're way into her session, which is we need to get back to shed for. So I want to just close on a few questions here, Chris. You're obviously, you've got it's a large business, a lot going on, big staff complement, quite intensive system. Why so pasture first focused?
Believe it or not, apart from, I guess everybody apart from works with us, it feels simple. It's easy maths. It's the same brake size every day. It's just about looking after and I guess nurturing the pasture. We farm the grass as well, and it's easy and it makes a lot of milk. And I guess coming from the North Island, where you find farming's a lot more difficult to grow quality grass, you come down here and it just felt easy. It felt easy to grow quality grass.
Okay, and the math there is that it's in the year gone. I need to ask. Run out of time. I need to ask the question: is how that it was a tough year, and this year the 24-25 was a real tough in spring on here, and I know that most of the pasture harvest dropped. You didn't. Good question is why not? But what are the 2 or 3 things you most want to get right with the pasture to deliver a substantially higher bottom line?
I think we've touched on pre-grazing, post-grazing. We will soil test the whole farm every year. We know what it wants. We can target certain areas, and we can we'll increase productivity in those paddocks. So, rather than just chucking a blanket over it and assuming that 10 soil tests across the farm is going to do it right, we do all the soil tests, and it actually saves us money by doing that, because you're actually only targeting the paddocks what are needed. We don't put any K on the farm, we just put super at various rates. We get a lot of K come from the winter barn, we spread it out to 80 to 90 hectares, and then the cows will move that around the farm. We do a lot of short breaks, long breaks, diagonal breaks, just trying to target the cows to push nutrients from the front of the paddock, which where it traditionally be, or overloaded out to the back as well. So if they can move it around for us, it's a lot cheaper.
You make it sound easy, Chris. I think we probably need to wrap it up there. good answer. I think what effectively Chris said is every part of every paddock is considered in its own. How do we grow more from that grass? And it's every blade of grass a prisoner. So utilisation is at the right time. So high energy, high utilisation combination, high profit. So
That's the plan.
right, thank you. I'm going to hand over to Veronica now, who's thinking, oh my God, how are we going to fit my session in?
No, you're on time, Al. Well done. Yeah. I didn't even have to stand at the front and be like, go. No, well done. Thank you, guys. And I actually am going to leave Jane up here. So sorry, Jane. You're going to stay up. Sorry. Thanks, Chris. And we are going to do this link into cows now. So I don't know why cows are last, but I feel like it doesn't really matter either way. They have to be a part of the system, don't they? But I think when you think about that link to cows, like Jane said it really well, that you have to get the feeding and the performance done really well, and then breeding kind of comes with that. But if we're not optimizing performance first, then we're getting the best cows ever. For what? So yeah, we have to make sure that kind of comes first. So I guess that's why we've done it in that order. So in your handout, if we switch over to the cow section, look at the page. Bear with me. On page 40, on there. On the bottom of page 40, there's a graph to kind of summarize, I guess, what Jane was saying at the beginning there. And that's the difference between milk production and milk solids in genetics. So there's this old saying in Southland, or I guess in New Zealand, that it's 90% feeding and 10% breeding. So DairyNZ being the people they are, were like, let's actually find out what that actually is. So they found out that it's actually 67% breeding and 33% feeding, or management, I guess we'll say, not feeding, but all management factors. So if we think about how this is broken down, Jane, could you just make some comments about what this means going forward and future decisions that farmers can make based off of breeding decisions and when they think about maximizing performance out of those animals?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that graph is really important, and I think it's saying that. I always think of the genetics of the animal as being a little bit like the cake tin. So, and the management is the ingredients for that cake. So you can have the best ingredients in the world. If you don't have the right cake tin, you're not going to make a good cake. Vice versa, you can have the best cake tin, you've got to get that management right. But it's so important. And, we have the breeding worth, which has 10 traits that go into it. And those traits, it looks at fertility, it looks at production, looks at, survival, longevity. And so that's ensuring that we have the right animal to get the most out of our system here. And, one thing we're seeing is that genetic merit, or that breeding worth of that cows moves forwards, they're actually eating more. So we're seeing, and that's, I think, part of, Chris, that combination between the cow and the feed. Absolutely, you've got to have you've got to have good quality feed, but you've got to have an animal that will graze it down and will eat it as well.
And it's shown in that graph that Chris is standing in front of, but his actually feed eaten has increased over the last 3 seasons, but it's actually increased a lot longer than that. He's slowly increasing as genetics have been gaining on farm as well. And then on the next page over, it talks a little bit about the profitability of those decisions that we're making out on farm, and that genetic gain has some clear and measurable impacts on farm performance and business. And it's showing that cows in the top, and this was taken from the DIGAD data set, that the cows in the top BW quartile are going to produce more milk solids, have better fertility, are lighter, and generate more profit per cow than those at the bottom quartile. And those gains are just going to be delivering more efficient cows on farm with higher returns. So any comment on that?
Yeah, and I think it's thinking about that, that breeding worth is an index, and that index has an economic value. So all of those traits that go into that index will have an economic value. And as Veronica said, that we don't, so we want animals that produce more, but we don't want to end up with big animals that produce more because they'll have a higher maintenance requirement. They don't do as well on wet soils, walking and things like that. So there's actually a negative value in there for live weight. So we want good performance, good milk production. We want good reproduction, but we actually don't want to end up with big animals that that don't perform as well in our system. And we probably went that way, I'm going to say 20 years ago, it's probably longer now, I'll show my age, but we brought in a lot of sort of North American, overseas genetics, really great milk production. Like, they will milk for 1,000 days, like some of those animals do over there, just keep milking and milking for 1,000 days. They did not work in our system. They weren't good at grazing, their reproduction was terrible, they were big animals, and it's sort of been, I suppose, you know, they say never waste a mistake. If you learn from it, it's not a mistake. And that's what we're really focusing in now on that breeding worth, is what are the traits in those animals that is going to add value or add monetary value to our system here.
Before I get into Chris's breeding strategy, is there any questions from the crowd for Jane on what we've just told you, or in Slido? No? Great. Okay, 7 seconds. Okay, let's get into the breeding strategy, Chris. So can you just, if everyone's kind of walked past the cows and they're kind of stage right to me, we can have a look over there. You don't need to look at me or Chris while we're talking. We can talk through it and you guys can have a look at it. But can you just talk through your breeding strategy and kind of just off what Jane was saying, what are you trying to achieve genetically on this farm?
Well, you touched on the small footprint cow. We average 490 kilos, which we've just worked out with a few culls. But what we want is a small...
Sorry, that's not weight. You don't weigh the animals. That's an estimate based off of kill sheets.
Yeah, love weight.
Yes, thank you.
We're just after a crossbreed cow that, F8 to sort of F12, sort of a big stomach capacity, smaller frame animal, which is going to produce hopefully lots of milk. We don't breed from our lowest 15%. If we would lift that rate higher if we knew we could get enough heifers. So we
Why?
Pardon me?
Why not the bottom 15%?
Well, all we want to do is breed from our better animals. So we're breeding from our best 85%. We get if you look at the quartile graph in the book, our replacements are coming from our better cows, and if we do it right, we'll be increasing the heifer replacements in that top quartile.
So that's page 41 that Chris is talking about, and you can see there he's got his, thank you to LIC, I know Morgan's here in the crowd, so thank you for sending us this, and Tracy. So we've got 25%, 28%, and 22% kind of down the line, coming from, in 2024, coming from the top 3 quartiles. And then in 2025, you can see there's actually more gain and more shift into that top quartile. And this happens slowly over time, that you're actually able to pull more into the top quartile. So if you actually take this over, say, 2 years back, and then you look at this again in 2 years, you'll see that you'll be able to, your percentages in your top quartile will start getting higher and the low quartiles will start getting lower.
Yeah, that's correct. And then even this mating, we've identified our 200 highest BW cows, and we've used 100 straws of sex semen. So hopefully we can even increase that quartile more by actually targeting the cows we want to mate replacements from, as well as dropping out the bottom.
So it sounds like you're making quite a lot of decisions and you're using some different strategies there. What data do you pull to make those decisions?
So I think it's just off advice from a lot of people based in Southland wanting to have that smaller frame cow, but high BW. We do cull tactically on production as well, and based off somatic feet, etc. But once we get past the musts, it just goes down off BWs.
And then in terms of other data, you've got herd tests. How many times you herd testing? You've got DNA being on farm. What else is happening on farm to give you pinpoint decisions?
They're the two key ones. We do 4 tests a year, plus we DNA all of our heifers, so we don't keep any unrecorded heifers.
So you know that the decisions that you're making out on farm, decisions you're making in what gets done is actually who it is, right?
Yeah, 100%. We could have five calves next to one cow in the winter barn. It's impossible to actually pick who is the mother, so that's why we DNA, so we're 100% right.
And can you just talk a bit about, this season, or last season, you had 100 extra heifers, you had a bit of surplus heifers come through. Are you using any dairy beef genetics, or are you just more onto that sexed And how are you implementing those surplus heifers?
We're probably going to use them up ourselves, but the plan was for surplus, but it's just going to give us more room to add some replacements through. The lowest 15% get mated with Hereford. We have got a market now for that. It'd be nice to increase it. We're increasing for probably about 150 to 200 saleable animals this year, which beats Bobbying. So just trying to find the market, being able to. It's all well and good if we mate everybody to Hereford, but we've actually got to be able to find somebody who wants them to and is happy with a crossbred animal. So as that market sort of increases, we can increase on that.
And then
it's the 6-week mark.
And then if you talk through your strategy on throughout mating, when is what going up? So heifers are first, mixed age cows are second. What's the plan?
Yeah, so on the
too close to you.
On the 20th of October, we'll put bulls out with the heifers. We'll mate them 10 days earlier, and on the 1st of November, we'll start the cows. It just sort of goes back to the pasture as well and what we do there. We analyse everything. Our pre-mating will run for about 5 weeks before the start of mating. We'll know exactly who cycled, who started cycling, who stopped, and then know what levers to pull. We're not waiting to the first and as the ambulance is at the bottom of the cliff and we're wondering why we've put up 70% of the cows. That's it.
So it's really to maximize lifetime performance then over a long period of time, not just worry about next season or this season.
Yeah, everything's got to be replicable. So if we can't be able to do it over and over or do our best to identify any animal what needs help to get back into the system, phantoms, etc. Even how we do it, we still find we're going to get 1 to 2% of phantom cows where you've AI'd them, been put up, they haven't held, and then you come to do your pre-test and that's it, it's fallen through. So we can do as much as we can to mitigate that, identify who's cycled, rather than just ticking that box and checking that she's cycled again. There's more that'll fall through the cracks, and it's such a long process to get them back in from being a calf to an R2, and it's just wasted if they're not in calf as a 2-3-year-old.
Perfect. Question?
Your mating plan for your R2s?
Just bulls. We just find that we've got more control of when it comes to calving. If they're 10 days early, we're just focusing on the heifers. It's more control going into the shed, focusing on retained, harder calvings, animal welfare. It's just a lot easier because it just comes in so fast that, they can sort of fall through the cracks if they're calving on the same day and it gets missed.
Anything else, Dan? So I want to just quickly talk about the jewellery that's hanging on the cows' necks. You've got Datamars on farm. How long have you had that on farm for, Chris? What season are we now?
This is finishing our 5th season. So we're really happy with what they've done. When we first started before that, it actually hasn't changed our in-calf rate at all, our 6-week in-calf rate. All we've done is replicated it, and it managed to take the 2 farm managers off the stand, which were on there for at least 6 weeks before the bulls came in, and make them make on-farm decisions rather than losing half of their day stuck on the stand. So that's been a huge benefit, and that's also helped in grass quality, looking at that, making those decisions, and they haven't just got off the stand, gone to have a look and seen, stuffed up that grazing, but the other fence has already been put up for tonight. Then you just get into that spiral out of control. So just being able to pull them out of the shed and do that. But we were really worried at COVID time about having enough staff and people coming in, and that was one of the levers what we pulled to make sure that we were in a good spot.
So it's more a people efficiency thing for your system. That was your first why you invested in it. Why do you keep it?
We kept it because we bought it outright.
So can you explain that with Datamars, how that works for those of us that subscribe to our jewellery?
A lot of it's subscription now, but when we originally did it, we brought them outright. So, battery life is still pretty good, isn't it, James? Turner's about 83%.
He's nodding yes.
Yeah. So, it's great for heat detection. We don't overdo it. We don't tail paint. We trust it. We're fully involved. We've actually had incidences where there has been a glitch overnight and they haven't drafted out or the list hasn't updated, and I think the boys have been within 2 or 3 cows where they've gone out and actually identified the cows on heat and not missed it. So once again, it just gives you another tool. It's not a silver bullet by any means, but you've still got the onus is on you to put up those heat cows. The guys will go out and pull out 2 or 3 cows that have just come in on heat, even though they've just come on just after milking. So they put a lot of effort into mating as well.
And then just to hear James and where's Trader? Where's he gone? Oh, you're at the back. Just to hear from you, James. Just come get the mic off me, or Chris. Just to hear what this technology means to you in your day to day, or how you manage your team, and like if this wasn't on farm, how would that impact you?
Yeah, well, I think Chris kind of covered it already. It just gets me out of the shed. We've talked about how, in that November period, the grass is cranking and it's easy to slip off. And, just having that technology to just free us up a bit makes a massive difference. The rumination's massive too. We can see where we need to put extra feed in, or like we're doing now with the silage.
And then I think this could be for either of you guys to mention, but just to kind of wrap up some of the reproduction stuff. But if we think about like this system as a whole, a holistic system, which parts of it are limiting reproduction performance? Like if you think of it as what everyone's trying to do more with reproduction. I've never met a farmer that's happy with their reproduction results ever, maybe 1 or 2 ever, but they think, oh, there's still 1% more. So what is it? What's stopping you guys from getting more out of the cows or better reproduction results?
Well, I'll pass it up to Chris, but I would say it's part of it is managing that spike.
This pyramid of grass.
Yeah, that would be my input on that.
Yeah, for us it's that week 4 to week 6 of mating, just that grass, NDFs through the roof. You're filling them up, but I'm not going to say it's rubbish, but it feels like cardboard for us, and just being able to supplement them and making sure that the energy level, not just feed levels, there. And it's something we can't really control as a bulk, because most of the majority of the feed will come from grass, but what is the 1 or 2 kilos we can put in just to try and help that. And also just condition score at calving as well, and making sure they're cleaned out. Mating starts at calving pretty much.
Careful, we're getting out of section now. We're saving that best one for last. All right, thanks James, appreciate it. Thanks for hopping up. So just to go through, because we are at that time of the year now where it's dry off, we're doing culling. We have kind of touched on culling a few times throughout the session, just because it is that time of year we're thinking about that. So can you just go through like your first and non-negotiables when you're going through your culling list of what you're sending away?
Empty cows to start.
Fast empty cows. You know what I'm trying to say, Chris. What are the things like past yonis, past empties? What's next?
Yeah, feed are big. Lameness. We do preventive trimming. We can. It wouldn't be. You could walk up to 8 kilometres or 9 kilometres in a day. So, I guess making sure they can get A to B, and then also just udder height as well with long walks, chafing, etc. And obviously SCC, mastitis, repeats, all of that sort of stuff. Yep.
And you already talked about your staging of your culling with this graph behind me, and then in Ron's financial section. Is there anything else to add to why you guys, what the benefit of doing that in the stages, or how big of stages you're going through in your culling?
That's just trying to maximise profit, like that, maximising the value of each individual animal, and if we can pull them out and put them in with a mob of 50 cows and you get another $200 a head or $100 a head, it's huge. And it doesn't take much to do it. It just takes a click of a button on a report, and yeah.
Is there any questions on Chris's culling strategy, Dan, from Slido? Anything from the crowd?
How do you manage culling when you get bad years of Yoni's results?
The question is, how does he manage culling if he gets bad years of Yoni's results?
We had a blanket policy. We had a not that flashy test this year, but non-negotiable was everybody goes. We've started with that. We've made a plan over the next couple of years that'll be non-negotiable to start with. We'll continue testing, and then we've still had the ability to cull another 40 to 50 cows on each farm, but we actually, for the first time in a little while, brought 40 heifers, which has allowed us still to cull on with like your normal principles.
Perfect. So I just want to also, we're going to kind of go into that winter management. We're going to go back to the barn in a bit and just have a sit down and do it actually at the barn. But before we do that, because we are starting talking about that culling and wintertime stuff, dry off strategy, Chris. So what's your main objective when you're drying cows off? What are you trying to protect? How is it done?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's 3 questions at once.
Yeah. The biggest thing is trying to make sure we can shut these cows down properly. They're doing what they're designed to do, and that's make milk. And sometimes the less you feed them, they don't actually start drying off. They start taking off their backs first. So just trying to keep them fully fed on some low quality feed and shut them down over a period of time. We'll dry off 200 a day. We won't do the whole lot, just so it's in measured time and it's quality. We're not doing bad habits, etc. But what happens in the barn after a week is that it gets a bit shitty, a bit like messy, and if their tea canal opens up because they haven't shut down properly, we're sort of leaving it open for infection.
And you're doing a staged dry off. Did you just say? You said kind of hinted at that. So you said you did 200 a day or so is what you guys do?
Yeah, and it's just normally keeping them in their calving groups to start with. So we'll just dry them off and chuck them in their bays of 150, or for any reason, if it's the middle, we could do 300 at a max. Why? Just cleanliness. By the time we're finished doing, I know everybody does a lot at one go, but it just seems a bit of a shit fight. So if we can keep it nice and clean, and our standards are kept, I think we'll get less infection or less issues. And I'm sure that's helpful for the people as well on farm. I mean, you're not doing combo dry cow yet this season. Are you doing combo? No, we're just doing straight dry cow. Just straight blanket dry cow. So yeah, no, I've done combo or dry cowed quite a few cows on days, and your arms are absolutely destroyed. And your attention to detail definitely starts to wane by about cow 500. So yeah, I think that's a smart way to do it, to keep the consistency going across, especially when you have the control that you can do it. So why not? Yeah. And then finally, so like if you are pulling that handbrake back on feed, is there something else coming in? Like because grass is going down, you want to make sure you're getting your final residual, your final average pasture cover. Is there something coming in? Yeah, we're just storing a bit of low quality silage for them. We do some targeted paddocks where we know that when the cows go in there and they drop in production, so we know that the actual grass quality itself is pretty average, so we'll shut them down in those paddocks. But we'll, rather than doing it in the whole mob of 1,000, we'll do it per mob, so it could be staged in 3 or 4 different stages, but on the same day on different feed levels and feed qualities. Great, thank you very much. Is there any questions for Chris on his culling or dry off strategy before we start moving?
What makes the trigger dry off? Is it cover? What day? What day is it? What does it look like? Anywhere between, generally it's been the 25th of May to the 2nd of June we've finished up, and pretty much that's 1780, 1800, that's pull up stumps. Have you ever tried to milk out of these things? I'm probably growing about 2 kilos a day by that time. So for us, winter milking or winter into June is not really conducive. It starts to get really wet. We start damaging the paddocks. Feels like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We make 1.2 solids on the last day compared to 2 solids next season. So, all questions? Good. All right, well, I'll summarize up there so we can get moving back to the barn. Thank you, Chris, so much. Thank you, Jane, but she's not done. She is going to help me in my last bit. So we want to move over to the barn this way, but I just wanted to say that cow performance on this farm has been lifting really, really well. So you can see that in that BW graph that I gave you guys in your handout. So well done, Chris and the team, for making that one of the big focuses on farm. And you can see that from that holistic system setup, performance is also driven through milk production and out through the financial profit of the farm. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk down this paddock and then back. What? We're going to go cross country. We're going to cross. Oh, sorry, I didn't even see. Yeah. I didn't even see the high-vis vests that are obviously right in front of me.
Just as you do too, James. What did just so you get your eyes on? What did this paddock score here? This is how many?
24-12.
This is 24-12 2 days ago, so therefore it's more likely
Yeah, low, high 24s. Yeah.
high 20, getting towards 25. So